I think what's also cool is that you lost 100 pounds.
95.
While Hometown was turning Ben Napier into a television star, his real life was becoming far more complicated than viewers realized. The star of Hometown built a reputation as a devoted husband, craftsman, and champion of his hometown.
Oh, wow.
All right.
Hey.
What do you think?
The smell reminds me of,
A litter box?
But behind the cameras, Ben was dealing with challenges that rarely made it onto television, from personal struggles to health concerns and the pressures that came with sudden fame. So what was really happening while Hometown was becoming a hit? And what parts of Ben Napier's journey have remained hidden from viewers? Join us as we uncover the heartbreaking tragedy Ben Napier has endured over the years. The family that lost everything twice. Growing up in Collins, Mississippi, in a household built on faith and very little else, Ben Napier learned one thing early and learned it thoroughly. Losing everything is not the end of the story. What you do next is. His father, Wayne, was a farmer who had taken out what Ben described in an October 2025 appearance on Sadie Robertson Huff's Whoa, That's Good podcast as a weird bank loan situation, specifically one that is actually an illegal loan that banks are no longer allowed to offer. The loan collapsed, the farm went with it, and the family was left with almost nothing, including an old Datsun car that the bank chose not to take because they decided it had no value. One of Ben's earliest memories is riding in that car when the hood flew up and smashed the windshield during a drive. His father's response was to pull over, rip the hood completely off the car, throw it in a ditch on the side of the road, and keep driving. That image stayed with Ben his entire life. Not as a trauma, but as a lesson. The Napier definition of a problem was not something that stopped you. It was something you removed from the vehicle and drove away from. Wayne rebuilt from the wreckage of the first loss. He became a truck driver during a period when that profession could generate real money, eventually owning his own 18-wheeler and his own trailers. He built financial stability for the family for the first time. He was, by Ben's account, in the most secure position he had ever been in as a father. Then he gave it all up voluntarily. Wayne felt what he described as a higher calling. He sold the truck, the trailers, the farm, the house, the 10 acres, the barn. He went back to school, earned a degree, then completed a master's from Duke University, and became a United Methodist minister. Ben's mother, Benny, became one too. The family moved repeatedly as Wayne was assigned to different churches. The housing that came with each position varied considerably in quality. The financial security Wayne had spent years building was gone again, this time entirely by choice. Ben grew up between those two losses, shaped by both of them. He has said directly that his perspective on heartache and loss came entirely from watching his parents lose things and start over, not once, but twice, without collapsing. He also grew up knowing exactly what it felt like when there simply wasn't enough money to go around. There were days in college when the free cafeteria lunch was the only meal he was going to get that day. There were Saturdays when he slept too late, missed the lunch window, and simply did not eat. But he survived it. The childhood Ben Napier lived in was not easy, but it produced something in him that the easy version would not have: a refusal to stop when things go wrong. Those things followed him into adulthood, into a marriage, into a dying town in Mississippi, and eventually into a decade of television. So how did the kid who grew up riding in a car with no hood end up standing in front of HGTV cameras? And why did the path that got him there almost not happen at all? 6 days in December, and the town nobody believed in. Ben met Aaron in December 2004 at Jones County Junior College in Ellisville, Mississippi. She worked on the yearbook. He was the kind of person who pulled rooms toward him without trying. Someone everyone wanted to be around. Someone she had been noticing for 2 years before they actually spoke. The first date was December 9th. He met her mother the same day. They looked at Christmas lights together on December 10th. By December 13th, they had decided they were going to get married someday. They celebrate what they call Love Week every year, the anniversary of the 7 days that decided their entire future. They transferred together to the University of Mississippi. Ben graduated in 2007 with a degree in history. After graduation, they made a choice that most people in their position would not have made. They moved to Laurel, Mississippi, Aaron's hometown, when Laurel looked like exactly the kind of place young people were supposed to be leaving, not moving back to. When Ben and Aaron arrived in Laurel in 2008, the downtown had scores of boarded-up buildings, a single restaurant operating in the entire Central District, and virtually no foot traffic. The community of 18,000 people had been watching its commercial center slowly empty out for years, with no particular reason to expect the trend to reverse. They moved into a downtown loft anyway and stayed. Ben worked as a youth pastor at Laurel First United Methodist Church. Aaron built her design and stationery business. Neither of them had a plan that anyone looking at it from outside would have described as likely to generate real results. Ben had also been teaching himself woodworking in a basement, making heirloom cutting boards and butcher blocks, drawing on something his father had modeled for him years earlier, the instinct to build things with available materials rather than wait for better circumstances. He had no formal craft training. He just kept working at it until the work was worth selling. The television opportunity arrived because a network executive had been following Aaron on social media after Southern Weddings magazine posted photographs of the Napiers' home on Instagram. She reached out. The couple, who had never pursued television deliberately, landed a show with HGTV that premiered in early 2016. Hometown has now run for 10 seasons. Laurel has gone from one downtown restaurant and no foot traffic to 30 revitalized historic buildings, multiple restaurants, a bakery that became so beloved that Ben and Aaron gained significant weight in the month it opened, and consistent pedestrian activity in streets that were empty when they arrived. Ben became the president of Laurel's Main Street America chapter, dedicated to ensuring the revitalization was real and lasting rather than television-generated novelty. The transformation of Laurel is one of the more genuine stories to come out of the HGTV era. But while that story was building on screen, something else was building off it. And it was not the kind of thing that makes comfortable television. The health battle he fought quietly for years. For most of the time that Hometown has been on air, Ben Napier has been dealing with a set of health realities that he did not discuss publicly, and that the show's warm aesthetic gave no particular reason to mention. They were serious enough that the people who knew him were paying attention, even while the audience was watching him build beautiful things in a Mississippi workshop. The first real warning had arrived years before the show, in 2014, when his father Wayne underwent emergency bypass surgery 1 month before his 60th birthday. Ben was already living with obstructive sleep apnea at the time, managing it with a CPAP machine, and had been for years without making it public. His grandfather had also had heart surgery. The generational pattern was specific and visible. Large men, physical workers, people who treated their health as something to manage around rather than something to prioritize, who eventually ran into consequences that could not be managed around anymore. Ben has described his family as a long line of big men who do not discuss their health until it becomes an issue. His father's bypass surgery at 59 was a clear picture of where that approach led. He began talking publicly about the need to change things after his daughter Helen was born in 2018, making posts about the family history and his intention to take his health more seriously. But there is a gap between stating an intention and actually changing the patterns behind it. And for several years, the gap between what Ben said about his health and what he was actively doing about it remained. By 2022, the conversation with his doctors had become direct. His blood pressure was at a level that required intervention, and his physicians wanted to put him on medication. That specific prospect, being medically managed for a chronic condition before he was 40, was the thing that finally produced sustained action. He built a home gym. He changed what he was eating fundamentally. He began intermittent fasting. He got up in the early morning hours to play basketball in the backyard. Aaron documented the commitment on Instagram, noting that he had started getting serious well before his scheduled surgery. In March 2023, Ben had surgery for a torn rotator cuff in his shoulder. The procedure also addressed a bone spur and trimmed damaged cartilage. The recovery stretched across 8 or 9 months, during which he could not do any upper body exercise and could not lift anything significant at the workshop. For a man whose professional identity is entirely built on physical craft, that recovery period was genuinely difficult in ways that went beyond the physical inconvenience. By April 2025, appearing on the Tamron Hall show alongside Aaron, Ben confirmed that over 3 years he had lost 95 pounds. The combination of the blood pressure diagnosis, the dietary overhaul, the exercise commitment, and the specific muscle loss during the shoulder recovery had produced a transformation that viewers who had been watching the show since its early seasons struggled to reconcile with the person they thought they knew. The Ozempic rumors arrived with the predictability of anything that happens to a public figure who loses significant weight in the current media environment. Ben addressed them without defensiveness. He said it was diet and exercise and the specific circumstances of the surgery recovery. He gained approximately 20 pounds back after rebuilding the muscle mass lost during the shoulder surgery, and he described that plainly, and without embarrassment, as getting physically stronger again. But the shoulder was not the only physical problem accumulating in the background, and the one that came next was in some ways harder to hear about for someone who builds things for a living. The ankle that may never be the same. Long before the blood pressure diagnosis and the shoulder surgery, Ben had destroyed his ankle playing basketball. The injury never received the kind of sustained attention it needed. He managed it alongside everything else, the way physical workers tend to manage injuries that would sideline someone in a less demanding job, treating it as a background condition rather than an active problem requiring direct intervention. The years of that approach caught up with him. By July 2025, Aaron shared on Instagram that Ben's doctor had recommended an ankle replacement. The joint was, in her description, so eaten up with arthritis that conservative treatment options were no longer adequate to address the damage. An ankle replacement is a significantly more demanding procedure than a rotator cuff repair, both in terms of the surgery itself and the recovery timeline, and the prospect of another extended period unable to work at full capacity was not a small thing for a man who builds things with his body for a living. Aaron's brother, a physical therapist, had been using a treatment called stem wave to help manage the pain in the meantime. Ben had not had the ankle replacement procedure as of mid-2025, but the medical recommendation was clear, and the arthritis in the joint was documented as continuing to progress. What is notable is the way he has handled all of it. He has not used his health battles as content. He has not turned them into a performance of vulnerability. He has dealt with them, talked about them honestly when asked, and kept showing up for the show and the shop and the family while managing physical realities that would serve as a reasonable excuse for anyone to slow down significantly. The same stubbornness that made his father rip a hood off a car and keep driving is recognizable in how Ben handles these things. You remove what is broken, or you manage it as best you can, and you keep going. But the health battles, as significant as they are not the only complicated part of the story that the warmth of the television show tends to obscure. Because the thing Ben and Erin built in Laurel brought its own set of difficulties alongside everything it gave. So what happened to the town when the cameras made it famous? And why was that a harder experience than it looked? What fame did to the town he was trying to save? When Ben and Erin chose Laurel in 2008, they were two young people who believed a specific place was worth investing in when nobody else was investing in it, and who wanted to live somewhere they could walk to a date night. The success of Hometown gave Laurel things it genuinely needed. Businesses opened, historic buildings were restored, foot traffic returned to streets that had been empty for years. The community got a bakery and restaurants and a reason for people from outside the region to come and spend time and money in a place that had been losing both for a generation. It also brought pressures that Ben and Erin have been honest about in ways that do not always make it into the headline coverage of the show's positive impact. Property values rose. Outside interest arrived from investors and developers who had no particular connection to the town and were responding to what they had seen on television, rather than to what the community actually was or needed. The specific character that had made Laurel worth saving, the history, the architecture, the community that had stayed when staying was hard, became a commodity in ways that could not always be managed on the community's own terms. Ben became the president of Laurel's Main Street America chapter, the organization dedicated to promoting sustainable revitalization of historic downtown districts. The role was a deliberate commitment to ensuring that what the show had catalyzed in Laurel was built on a foundation that would last beyond the television exposure and serve the people who had always lived there, rather than primarily serving the people arriving because of the show. That is harder work than it sounds, and it sits in a different register from the satisfying before and after structure of a renovation reveal. It requires constant choices about what to protect and what to allow to change, how to tell the difference between development that serves the community and development that extracts from it, and how to maintain a place's identity while it is being watched by millions of people and attracting attention from outside forces that have no particular investment in its long-term well-being. Preserving a town's identity while the world is watching is a challenge few people ever face. But for Ben Napier, the deeper challenge was never just about protecting a place. It was about deciding what parts of his own past would be carried forward and what parts would end with him. And that raises the question, what pattern was he determined to break when he became a father? The father he became, and the pattern he decided to break. Everything in Ben Napier's story runs through a single central motivation that he has been clear and consistent about. He wants to be there for his daughters. Helen was born in 2018. May was born in 2021. The moment Ben became a father, the family health history that had been an abstract concern since his father's bypass surgery in 2014 became a personal urgency that he could not justify setting aside anymore. He has said that he wanted to be present for his children for as long as possible, and that specific desire was the real engine behind the weight loss and the lifestyle changes and the willingness to submit to surgeries and recover from them and keep going. The pattern he was trying to break was visible and specific. Large men in his family did not prioritize their health until it became a crisis. His grandfather had heart surgery. His father had emergency bypass surgery at 59. Ben himself had sleep apnea and high blood pressure and a destroyed ankle and a torn rotator cuff, all accumulating in the body of a man who had grown up watching the men around him treat physical capability as a given rather than something that required maintenance and care. He posted a Bible verse on Instagram in December 2023, a reference to not losing heart even as things outwardly deteriorate. That public moment captured something that was already visible in everything he had been doing in private. He was not pretending the difficulties were not real. He was choosing to continue anyway. Which part of his story hit you differently than you expected? And when the cameras stop rolling and the restoration is complete, what does enough really look like for a man who spent his life rebuilding what was broken? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.